Hey there, Rebus forever here. So first off, thanks to the viewer who donated this. I've attempted to make an extra special effort with this one, so mega thanks. Spoilers ahead, I couldn't not talk about the weird writing in this game. Have you been eager to play almost exactly the same Assassin's Creed as they released last week, but in a new historically themed cosplay outfit? Or perhaps you yearn for a simpler time, a time where you could get killed by your dad for killing a guy that killed your sister, yearn for revenge against said father, and then when finally given the opportunity to use your assassin skills to challenge him years later, instead you find yourself doing errands for your stepbrother, who by the way comes off as a bit of a dick. You have to earn the right to see your father rather than just use your totally not ninja skills to just find your estranged parental figure. These missions artificially inflate the running time of the game. Involve harming a faction opposed to your father, who as a real human person you would assume you would naturally ally with. Which leads me to assume maybe the writers aren't real life people. Have Ubisoft hired AI with no understanding of human nature? Or more likely, do they work out the main storyline and then add all the busy work after? And since that question bit was so long, do you like your game super grindy with a side of olives? Then this might be the Greek yogurt flavoured Assassin's Creed game you've been waiting for, so long as you don't mind eating it with a spoon made of inconsistent plot and DLC content that probably should have been in the game. Let it not be said that the game looks bad. I've been impressed with the performance after tinkering a bit, even on my older GPU. The game looks good at all times, the music works, the voice acting is totally fine. The combat, a bit frustrating at times in cramped environments, does everything it needs. The gameplay itself is totally acceptable, though repetitive. But after so many Assassin's Creed games, a basic level of competence with the mechanics should be a fair assumption, especially since they barely change from game to game. The main issue I have with the game, and the focus of my review, is the story. Or more specifically, the individual links in the chain that construct the greater whole. Like if you bought a book and found every third page had been replaced with a moderately articulate 5-year-old's crayon-written summary of what was on the page previously. It might be funny at first, maybe even surreal, but over time, as the characters seem to make inexplicable decisions, it might become wearing. My interest in the story has waned. For example, early on, the main antagonist is a character known as the Cyclops. I had accidentally explored the map a bit beforehand, which included the camp he would eventually spawn in. When sent on a mission to steal the Cyclops' eye, that I was advised would be very tough, I was disappointed to find that unfortunately the game didn't get this email, and the area was still littered with the corpses from my previous visit, but no alive opponents. Sneaking felt both superfluous and somehow disrespectful. The plan in intent was that stealing the Cyclops' obsidian eye would, according to Marcos, our unstable associate,
send them to Hades, then loot them for all they have. We'll be rich!
Cause the Cyclops to forget the debt you and Marcos owe him. Does that make sense to anyone? I mean, if we take the eye, presumably he would need to buy another one, right? And need to reclaim the debt all the more? Why would having his eye stolen make him forget about anybody's debt to him? Ubisoft? Why? As I say, not sure the writers were real people. The debt is neither forgotten, nor does he seem overtly concerned about the missing eye until you literally shove it inside a goat's anus. Honestly, all of this happens, and it was all for nothing. Like even the goat thing. I wish I'd made that up, but I didn't. The game begins fairly well with a cliche but well presented rags to riches story. But before you even leave the first island, the overall story begins to feel compromised by these at best illogical and at worst entirely inexplicable moments. It all just begins to feel like a convoluted waste of time to delay your advancing through the game. I reckon there was some sort of situation where the overall story was plotted out and the transitions between the main arcs were all arranged, but then to add a couple more hours to each part, the writers brought their kids to work and let them make suggestions. I think we should steal them bad man's eyes. Or, what if he had to do jobs for the mean dad before we could even meet him? Oh no! And for whatever reason, they just obliged and, slapped a bunch of needless bloat that rarely pays off. You still get to sneak, when the game lets you, and fight when the game isn't throwing unkillable enemies or indestructible murder wolves at you. You get to make choices that rarely make any difference, but at least the game has my favourite mechanic ever. Knocking someone out and immediately recruiting them to join your crew amuses me most times. I sort of struggle not doing this each time I take over the Eagle. Anyway, at least the whole employment thing is 100% accurate, I assume, in Ubisoft. The DLC is fairly obnoxious too, with no in-game way of earning the Black Unicorn, which basically for the longest time I mistakenly thought I could earn in-game. Finding out I'd have to give Ubisoft some money for the pleasure filled me with sorrow. But then it's an Ubisoft game, what did you expect? As the game has subdued my interest in its story, the individual game mechanics have become more of a chore, and less involving over time. The realization that all of my effort is in service of advancing a story I care less and less about will probably be the reason I stop playing. To the game's credit, I am at about the 10-hour mark and intend to continue for a while yet. If an incoherently written, slightly glitchy, feta-flavoured Assassin's Creed game with loads and loads of sack, both the Hessian and bullbag variety, is the itch that you've needed scratched. This game is either the game for you or a warning. Once again, thanks for the donating of this game. This is probably the most up-to-date review I've ever put out, so huzzah for that. There is a Steam group, there is a Patreon, there is a PayPal. I'm trying to save up for a slightly better microphone, so check that out if you want to. Like and sub, and hopefully see you again.